You're tuned into Collateral Damage, the military families FAP and IDC leave behind. Voices have been altered, because in this system, honesty has a price. Let's jump into Episode 7. Fluff and Fury exposing the military's fake fix for abuse.
Okay, so jumping right into this, you've sent over some pretty intense stuff, this material on the Family Advocacy Program, FAP, and then like all this Lundy Bancroft stuff, his book, Why Does He Do That, and like some online articles and things.
Yeah, and it is a lot to unpack, but I think the sources you pick really raise some really important questions, like, potentially how FAP might be, approaching domestic abuse within the military. And especially when you consider like Bancroft's experience working with abusive men, like he's been doing it a long time,
Right. Yeah, 15 years, I think it said. But before we get into Bancroft, let's start with that FAP information. There was this anger management isn't enough document, and the DoD Central Registry just like really stood out to me.
Yeah. I mean, it's a pretty powerful example of like the way FAP works. So what it is, the DoD Central Registry. It's basically this central database, right? And it's tracking, reported incidents of domestic violence. And it covers like all branches of the military. So
like Army, Navy, Air Force, all of them.
Yep, all of them.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting is what happens when a service member is like listed in this registry. It's the consequences are huge.
Yeah, the document really emphasized that. It sounded like it could be career ending.
Yeah, it totally could. Like promotions. Forget about it. They could just like stop. Career advancement over, and even separation from service.
Yeah.
So basically your whole military career could be like totally derailed.
Yeah, and that's where it gets even more concerning, because the document also says like they don't even really need solid evidence. Like placement on this registry can happen just based on allegations alone.
Right, and that's a huge issue, and like a serious concern in terms of due process, right? Imagine like your whole career getting derailed, like everything you've worked for, and it's all based on allegations with like minimal investigation and maybe not even any real evidence.
It just doesn't seem right.
Yeah. I mean, it raises questions about fairness and the idea that you're innocent until proven guilty. I mean, it's a fundamental principle, but the system that your document is outlining, it doesn't really seem to follow that.
It's scary to think about, honestly. Okay, so let's switch gears a little bit and talk about Lundy Bancroft. Like you said, he's worked with abusive men for a long time.
15 years, right? Yeah, 15 years. Like he was the co-director of Emerge. It was a program for abusive men. So he really knows his stuff. And one of the big things that he argues, and he makes this point really strongly in the excerpts you sent from his book, Why Does He Do That, is that like traditional anger management, not enough.
Yeah, he calls it a myth. Myth number 7, anger management isn't enough. But like, why not? What's wrong with anger management?
Well, it's not that anger management is like totally useless, right? But Bancroft's argument is that anger isn't the root of the problem. It's not the cause of the abuse. It's more like a symptom.
Okay, that's interesting. So like someone could learn to control their anger but still be abusive.
Exactly. That's exactly it. Because what Bancroft is saying is that these guys, these abusers, they have these attitudes, these beliefs, and it's these attitudes and beliefs that actually create the anger. Like they're using the anger as a tool, as a way to control the other person.
So the anger itself isn't the problem. It's almost like a byproduct of something deeper.
Yeah, exactly. Like he uses this example, right? This guy Ray, and Ray's kid, his child, is missing, and he's freaking out. He's furious with his wife, but the thing is, even in this horrible situation, right? Teaching Ray to like take a time out when he feels angry, it's not going to solve the problem
because it doesn't address why he's taking it out on his wife in the first place.
Right. And what Bancroft is getting at is that it's probably because Ray feels entitled. Like even with his kid missing, he still expects his wife to like focus only on him and his emotions. And if she doesn't, he gets angry.
That makes sense.
And there's this quote from the book that you highlighted. It's so perfect. It's like Bancroft's talking to these new clients and they're all like, "Oh yeah, we're here for anger management." And Bancroft's just like, "No, you're not. You're here because of your abuse."
He doesn't mince words, does he?
No, he doesn't. And it's important, right?
Yeah.
Because it shifts the focus. It's not about the anger. It's about the abuse. And that's what needs to be addressed.
So what is it then? Like, what is the core problem?
Well, Bancroft says it's this distorted sense of right and wrong. like these guys, they have this whole belief system. They feel entitled to power. They need to control their partners. And their idea of what's acceptable behavior, it's just warped. You know, they don't even understand how their partners are feeling.
And this is all the time, not just when they're angry.
Exactly. It's like they're operating from a different set of rules.
Yeah.
And those rules are all about them being in charge, even if it means like hurting the other person.
It's like their whole value system is messed up.
Right. And that's why just managing the anger isn't enough. You got to get to the root of the problem. You got to challenge those beliefs.
Yeah. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a broken bone.
Yeah.
Okay, so Bancroft also talks about these other myths surrounding abusers. Like myth number 6 is that abusers, they lose control.
Right.
Yeah.
But Bancroft says, like, no. It's not that simple. Like, their actions, they're often very deliberate. He uses this example, like, say someone's really enraged.
Right.
They might start smashing things, you know, but they'll usually avoid hurting someone who's vulnerable. Like they won't kick someone in the head when they're down.
So they're not completely out of control.
Yeah. And that shows that they still have some control. And it means that the abuse isn't random. Like, it's often targeted and it serves a purpose, like maybe to intimidate their partner or to punish them or to get them to do what they want.
It's almost strategic.
Right. It's calculated. So it's not just about like uncontrolled anger.
And then there's myth number 8. The myth that abusers are mentally ill.
Yeah, and Bancroft's like, nope, not true.
Yeah.
Like, most of the men he worked with, they were totally fine, psychologically speaking. Like, they understood what they were doing.
Yeah.
They knew the consequences.
So it's not a mental illness. It's like you said, it's this messed up value system.
Right. It's how they see the world, how they see their relationships.
And like attributing it to mental illness, it almost lets them off the hook, right?
Right, exactly. It's like saying, oh, well, they're not really responsible for their actions, but they are, you know. They need to be held accountable.
Okay, and the last myth you highlighted was myth number 11, that low self-esteem is the root cause of abuse.
Right. And you know, you might think like, okay, so we need to help these guys feel better about themselves.
Yeah.
But Bancroft, he's like, actually, that can make things worse.
So?
Because if you just try to boost their self-esteem without addressing the underlying issues, it can actually make them feel even more entitled. Like, oh yeah, I am superior, and that means I can treat my partner however I want.
So it's not that they don't think highly enough of themselves; it's that they think too highly of themselves.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And it all goes back to this idea of power and control. Like, that's what they're really after.
Okay, so we've talked about FAP and some of the potential issues with relying on anger management. And now you've brought up this online article by Bancroft, Men's Angry Messages to Me. What's the connection there?
Well, this article, it gives us another way to see how abusers think. You know, like Bancroft, he talks about all these angry messages that he gets from men. And it's crazy because they'll read about these really clear examples of controlling behavior, like really degrading stuff, but they don't see it as abusive. They're just like, oh, that's just normal relationship stuff.
Wow. So even when he's describing like the exact things that they're probably doing.
Yeah, exactly. And what that tells us is that their whole understanding of what's okay in a relationship, it's totally distorted. And that's why Bancroft says, like, look, abusiveness, it's all about these guys believing that they have the right to make demands on women and to punish them if they don't do what they want.
So it all comes back to that sense of entitlement.
Exactly. And it's the sense of entitlement that drives the abuse, not the anger itself.
And I guess that's why it's so concerning that FAP might be so focused on anger management. Like, if they're not addressing these deeper issues, the entitlement, the need for control, then how can they really expect to make a difference?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question, right? Like, if you're only teaching these guys how to suppress their anger, you're not really getting to the heart of the problem.
Yeah.
And you're not challenging their whole belief system.
Right. You're not changing the way they think about their partners or about relationships in general.
Exactly. And that's what needs to happen for real change to occur.
Okay, and in the article, Bancroft also talks about how the men who send him these angry messages, they never take responsibility.
Right. Oh, yeah, all the time. They'll blame their partners for their problems. They'll blame Bancroft. They'll blame his book. But they won't look at themselves. They won't take any ownership of their own behavior.
And that seems to tie in with, why does he do that?
Yeah, yeah.
Right? Like the excerpts you sent, those abusers are always justifying their behavior and blaming their partners for making them angry.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a classic pattern. They refuse to see their own role in the situation.
So lack of accountability.
Huge red flag. And it's something that any effective intervention would have to address.
So to sum up, it sounds like we've got some serious concerns. On the one hand, we've got this FAP registry that can have huge consequences for people in the military, and it doesn't seem to be all that fair. And on the other hand, we've got all this research from Lundy Bancroft suggesting that anger management just isn't enough to deal with domestic abuse. And it's because the abuse isn't really about these anger, it's about these much deeper issues like entitlement and control and this really warped view of right and wrong.
Exactly. And those are the things that need to be targeted.
Okay, so this is a big question, but like what would a more effective approach look like? Like if we're going to really deal with domestic abuse, what needs to change?
Well, first of all, we got to move beyond anger management.
Yeah.
Like, yes, it's important to help people manage their anger, but that's not the main event. We need interventions that directly challenge those deep-seated beliefs, the entitlement, the need for control.
So not just teaching them to calm down, but actually changing the way they see the world.
Exactly. And that's hard work, right?
Right.
But it's necessary. We need to help these guys understand the impact of their behavior. Like really see it from their partner's perspective. And we need to teach them how to have healthy relationships, relationships that are based on equality and respect.
It sounds like we're just starting to understand the complexity of this issue, but this deep dive has definitely given me a lot to think about, and I hope it has for our listeners too. And I would encourage anyone who's interested to check out Lundy Bancroft's work because he really does offer some incredible insights, and maybe with a deeper understanding we can start to find more effective ways to address domestic abuse. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's been a really important conversation.